Small things like that, and what we want to do is have an attention to detail that I'm trying to produce. Now, all of this is, none of this is really new. Some of the ways in which I'm wanting to approach it may be a little bit different, and so that's at least what I'm trying to talk about. We want to build a knowledge of the Bible. It's not different that we cover every book in the Bible. We are going to cover that in a little bit different way, though. For this reason, a lot of times people put, and it'll be down, we cover every verse of every book of the Bible. And you'll see that advertised in a number of ways. And I'm not saying people are lying when they put that. I'm saying that they are aspiring to something that is practically impossible to do within the framework of a program. You can assign it, and certainly the students need to be reading the Bible and going through the Bible, but to go through in detail every verse, covering everything in that verse, is impossible in a 2-year program. And then when I say things like that, people say, well, wait a minute, well, how are they supposed to know the Bible then? They need to understand when they get done that they're being introduced to the Bible, they're giving a structure on the Bible, that they can go to that book, they know what that book's about, they know how it's put together, they know and have the tools necessary to be able to discover even more than what maybe that teacher was giving in that class if they were doing it. See, if we're only going to give knowledge out in such a way as where these students are going to say what I said, then they will never be put in a position to be able to teach beyond what I taught. I want my students to be able to know things so that it's not just, they're not limited by what they got here, but rather what we provide is the foundation upon which they can build, that they're going to be able to do, and with our confidence in the truth, far beyond what we technically went through when they were here. Now, as they found out in covering Hebrews 1 this week, that doesn't mean that we're not going to cover quite a bit of the Bible in detail. It means, though, that it's just as important to understand how Hebrews is put together as it is to understand what is found in Hebrews chapter 1 and verse 3. It means that you need to understand the overall book. Now, when I say this to you, and some of you are looking at me kind of like, I'm not sure what he's talking about. When's the last time you studied Zechariah? Now, if you were at Granbury Street, it's been recently, because I just studied Zechariah and covered it in sermons. But you see, even if I went over Zechariah as Brother Paddle, I have down to cover that. The amount of time he's going to have to cover that, minimal. One day. Do you know the book of Zechariah after one day? No. Can we give you the tools where you can understand it, though, when you leave here, because you're willing to study it yourself? That's one of the differences that we want to get across, because if all we do is provide them information, send them out, then we're telling them they don't need to study when they leave here. The one lesson they're going to hear throughout is you'd better study when you leave here. Because we're going to give you the tools to make that study meaningful, that you're not just looking into your notes you received while you're here, you're looking into God's Word, because we help prepare you and gave you the means to be able to do that. So when I talk about knowledge, we need to understand that's what we're talking about, the nature of that knowledge. But that's why you don't just build knowledge in a preaching school, you also want to build skills. So we're going to cover the whole Bible. But it's just as important how you cover it. We want men to build skills. Now, the skills that a preacher needs cover more than what you find when he steps into the pulpit. We just went over this, gentlemen, didn't we? Most people see the skill of a preacher as he needs to be in homiletics. That's public speaking. And he does. Matter of fact, we have doubled the number of homiletics classes that we're going to be offering. We've actually taken the nature of the schedule and changed it so that we've added 5 hours of study for their students every week in class time. Part of that is so we can go from 58 classes to 72 classes. In this process, though, they're going to be gaining these skills. I've doubled the number of homiletics. They're going to learn then how to basically do introduction to public speaking, which we're going to talk about the proper way to read. They're going to learn textual preaching. They're going to learn expository preaching. They're going to learn topical preaching and what the differences are between each one of these things. They're going to learn what the skills are in a number of different ways to speak. We're going to have 2 classes just to teach them to teach. See, in my experience as a preacher, I have taught more than I have preached in my years preaching. And yet, that's not usually reflected in how we go about training. So we're going to be working on that skill of teaching. There are also skills that go on that are the before you ever step into the auditorium skills that you need, though. The first skill you need, and I don't know how many of those who are preachers can remember this, you graduate from preaching school. You're excited. You get a job. You're excited. You go down there, you're unloaded, everything's great. You get up on Monday morning, and now you got to figure out what exactly you're going to do because there's no one else there to teach you lessons. What are you supposed to do? The goal then of any kind of teaching skills in a preaching school should be to prepare men to prepare themselves. Indeed, I consider that to be what education is truly all about. So that they're comfortable, they get up, we go in and we're ready Monday morning. I'm going to dive into God's Word. I'm going to know how to deal with it. It's why we have doubled the length of the hermeneutics class from 2 hours to 4 hours. And if you want to know what they're going to be using for that class, I can direct you to the books over here. There's a very fine book with a very fine author. I know him well. He's me. But that book is going to be the foundation for how you study the Bible, how you interpret the Bible. We're following that up with another class on hermeneutics, on special hermeneutics, getting into greater detail. We're following that up with 3 exegesis courses. One that incorporates the book of Jude because it has so many interpretive problems. We follow that up with a course in rhetorical exegesis to understand how you incorporate history into the study of the text and how you understand the nature of literature and storyline when you look at Ezra for history and Esther for storyline to appreciate those aspects of Scripture that help draw out the meaning in a more deliberate way. We then have also, we've doubled the amount of Greek that people are taking so that they will make sure a full year of Greek and then follow that up with a Greek exegesis course in which we will teach 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John from the Greek text. That will begin next year, so you first-year guys are off the hook. So you see some of these things, but everything is about the value of getting into the text and to have those skills, language skills, rhetorical skills, basic exegesis skills of understanding how words work. Those are things you have to know on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, rather than call up the preaching school and say, hey, Pat, Kevin, help me out here. Our job is to help them out in 2 years so they don't need as much help when they leave. That's what true education should be about. It's not that we don't want them calling in, we don't want them checking in with us. We want them prepared, though. And so we want those skills there. They're going to be visiting and learning what it is to make a visit by actually doing it. We're going to be working, we're beginning this week, on working within a visitation program that we conduct as a group of students and teachers so that they understand what that is to make these visits. That's part of the program. Evangelism, you need to also do, not just on campaigns, going somewhere else. I want them to learn that evangelism is what you do right here where you are, too. And therefore, we will be going out locally in order to evangelize and learning those processes of how we reach people, how we conduct a Bible study, and to help other people do the same. So it's not just about, I know the plan of salvation. Our goal is to help people be able to communicate that effectively to people who need the plan of salvation. So it's about skills. They need to learn how to study. They need to learn how to interpret. They need to know how to preach. They need to know how to teach. They also need interpersonal skills. They need to understand the role of preacher. Now, that's not new to have a class on life and work of the preacher. One of the differences is the hybrid courses we're creating in which we are combining the text to teach with a topic in order to teach it. The text for our class on life and work of a preacher is 1st and 2nd Timothy and Titus. It will be taught then in a very direct way of here is Paul's advice for how the preacher's life should go, and then you incorporate the practical advice, not just as you've ever taught that or preached Timothy to a congregation, but directly to the audience for which it was intended. How do you be a leader as a preacher? How do you help elders lead? We're currently studying leadership now, but we're doing that by the first half covering the book of Nehemiah as a case study in leadership. So we're incorporating things, so it's a little bit different of how we're approaching it. But the goal is to have all these skills in which we can interact with people, that when they get to a congregation, it's not just that they've heard about it. I want them to have experienced these things as much as possible in our interactions. When we look at doing some of these things, though, you put together knowledge and these skills. There's something else that has to go into it. And I do not know that we have been as deliberate in saying this before, but the third thing you have to do is address character. And that's why the teaching of the text and of any topic, as well as the critique that is received, critique is not limited then to homiletics. Critique is not limited to teaching class, or it's not a grade on a paper. Part of the critique that goes into preaching school is about how you conduct yourself in life. Most preachers fail not because they cannot give a lesson from the pulpit, but because they fail to live the Christian life the rest of the week. Somehow, sometime in a preaching school, it can be that people separate what I know because I went to school for how I need to live. The way in which we teach, we want to make sure we avoid that problem. I have no illusions that we will avoid it entirely, but I want you to know that everything that we're trying to do, it's understood that these students are going to hear directly the way in which you live, the standards you must employ, why we push you, and that it's not just about 2 years in school, it's about learning things that you carry over for the rest of your life. It doesn't do any good for you to be a great Christian for 2 years in preaching school. If that's the high point of your Christianity, we failed. Our job is to create here those who are already committed Christians and to teach you how to grow the rest of your life to be someone that other people will want to follow as you follow Christ, 1 Corinthians 11 and verse 1. And that's why we're also about character. There is a simple principle that I believe. It is this. Preaching depends upon your own spiritual growth. I did not say spiritual knowledge, I said spiritual growth. That's why we want to teach these men to grow spiritually, which is not just about what they know, but about who they are. So they take that with them in 2 years, and they continue to grow, because that then fuels what they're capable of for the rest of their lives. That requires a faculty with experience, with a lot of different experiences. I'm thankful we have that. I'm thankful that I inherited a faculty that come from a lot of different places with a lot of different things going for them. They already found that that doesn't mean that I will not give them additional things to do. We are working on certain things right now that I'm going to now relax a little bit of how we approach this. But we want to get it to where the syllabus that we create for every class can be demonstrated that it is on a college level. And that is required of the teachers when they submit a syllabus before they ever begin class. We also are using that for this reason. There's a secondary reason for it. And those of you who've gone to school, I hope, can appreciate it. One of the first things we did the week before class began is Pat, our academic dean, and I went over, and Pat did the work for me that I asked him to do, and laid out so that we looked at all the assignments, all the memory work, all the tests, and our goal was to make sure that we were keeping a regular routine of work going on rather than loading everything at the end for this simple reason. What I mean by that is we did not want them to simply go through a class, sit through, in our case, 9 weeks of classes. At the end of that 9 weeks, have a paper due, following week, take a test. Instead, what we're wanting to do is create far more of the routine of a gospel preacher of things due every week. Those of you who are preaching know that that's the real challenge. It's you wake up and you're tired on Sunday night, you're exhausted, and you're trying to figure out how you could possibly get enough sleep in that night to get up and do anything the following day. And yet Monday comes around and you say, I've got to get to work on another set of sermons, another set of lessons. So what we're trying to do is formulate our workload in such a way where they have a sermon due, an article due, all the time. They will also be tested. They will also write papers. Why throw in the papers? I joked with them because when's the last time as a preacher you were required to write a research paper? No eldership has ever asked me to write a research paper, and for that I am extremely thankful. But why then do we still require papers in school? The students are probably asking themselves that question as well right now. For this reason, writing is where you best show the quality of your thinking. If we're to understand how well you are thinking and how well you can express that thinking, then we must have you write. And that's that combination. It's not just about being glib as a speaker. You will not get by long term because you're a great talker. Being a great talker does not translate into being a great preacher. Sometimes that just means that you need to sit down and shut up because you're not having anything worthy to say. A preacher is someone who gets up because he has God's word to speak. So we want to make sure that that's what we're doing. We need a faculty that's committed to these things, and I'm thankful for those who are committed to that. A curriculum, and if you want to investigate the full curriculum of what I've designed that's available online, you go to Curriculum Course of Study, and you can see what we've outlined. It also requires a commitment to excellence, a determination that we are going to have high standards. And by the way, those of you who are supporters of students, I want to give you a little bit of a heads up. A C student can still be a good preacher. So don't drop our students if they come back with C's. That may mean that we've got high standards. We've actually played in a little bit in the church to the country of grade inflation. I want these students to know when they get an A, they've earned an A. They haven't been given an A. So, guys, you need to understand you're going to have to work for it. But when you work for it, the benefit is not the A. The benefit is what you will have when you leave here because you worked hard enough to get the A. And if you can just make a C and you're willing to work hard enough and it takes everything you get in some classes to get a C, hello, Greek. Right, guys? Then great. Work hard. Because work ethic is what you need as a gospel preacher. You need it on your own. For a preaching school to work, I said it takes a faculty, it takes a curriculum, it takes excellence, it takes support. I couldn't be here without support. Students couldn't be here without support. The faculty couldn't be here really without support of some kind. And I think one of the things that's hard is for you to be able to see a tangible idea of what my money is. When we write the check, is it just a check? We put it down, it's on there, it shows up at the end of the year, we go through, okay, we support Brown Trail School of Preaching. Let us talk to you more about what this actually accomplishes in students' lives. or show you some of the students who leave and what they're able to do because you're willing to support not just them, because you can have all the support in the world for students and not have a school because there's no one there to teach them, and you don't have what you need just to do the basic run. And let me tell you, Heath Stapleton has made tremendous progress for us on our support, and I know some of you are here and that you reflect that. And to that we say thank you. But I also want you to know this. I do not view what we're trying to accomplish as let's just, okay, we barely made it. We got in the black, and the elders will just be cartwheels when we get there. And we're there. We're almost there. We're almost there. We have actually met our budget 2 out of the last 3 months. When you compare that to where we were a year ago, that's amazing. And that's a lot of work. But that's not the goal that we have. That is necessary for the goal. The goal is to be a model school of preaching that other people are going to want to see and emulate. They may not. That's not important. It's to be that quality. And we're thankful that you're willing to be part with us, that you're partnering with us to make that happen. It's not going to be something that we're just going to sit up and do. It's going to turn on the lamp one time and everything's great. It's going to take work. And I ask for your prayers as we work on that. When you look on our website, you're going to see this phrase or phrases. Building knowledge, building skills, building character, building preachers. Everything we're doing is going to be built around those 4 things. We have a Spanish department that is doing this same thing. They need support too. Brother Willie Alvarenga, we work together, and I'm looking forward to more and more work that we've done of making this happen. It's a growing department, it's a growing need, and we want to grow the 2 together. We're going to be having chapel together every Wednesday to bridge that divide. I'm going to be learning something beyond Buenos Dias eventually. But you know, when we think about what that challenge is of reaching people and training people, right now it's nice because you see guys who are just starting out. What will they be in 2 years? Our work is to try to figure out what they should be and then make it happen. And that means challenging them to come up to what we think they can be. And I hope that you will encourage them to do the same. This is a privilege. I have talked, and my heart has been in various ways in preacher training, even though I haven't done it in 20 years. But I consider it so valuable to encourage people, to always point people to go, to encourage them and help them along the way. I'm thankful as I look out at those of you here that I see the same kind of heart for that. Our goal, and what I'm describing to you, what I believe I told the elders originally, is there tend to be 2 different ways to look at preacher training. One is a vocational approach, just kind of, here's the information, here, go out, do what I tell you, and everything will be great. The other is closer to an academic approach, which is, here's this information, let us think about it, have a lot of thought go into it, really high, do a lot of papers, work on that, and do those kind of things. I think preaching requires both of you. Visiting people is not an academic exercise, but it matters in preaching. Preaching itself is not an academic exercise, but it requires academics to do it well and do the study well. What does it take to bring them together? I think it means it takes what all these things we've talked about with this addition. The will to be personal in your training, to commit to the individual men, to mentor them, to speak with them, not just at them, to demonstrate things to them and coach them, to take them along the path as far as they can go, help them up, let them fail, and then dust them off and show them why they failed and how they're going to be better. That, I submit to you, is something that we preachers have to do for the rest of our lives. At Brown Trail School of Preaching, we mentor preachers. We're going to do that to the best of our knowledge, our ability, strength. And I'm thankful that right now we're still able to do that. As I look at the back of the room, all these wonderful platitudes I have spoken have lasted long enough to get the food ready. I have been trying to give you an idea of this, but I do know that you need to eat. So I thank you for your patience. So with that in mind, I'm going to turn over, and Eddie, would you please give instructions? If you have any questions at all about some of the things that we're trying to do, we're going to be producing more materials. Hopefully some of this is going to make more sense later on. But I invite you to visit, talk with us, and most of all, I ask for your prayers.
Thank you. All right. First of all, thank you so much for your patience. We have food to eat. How about that? So that's a good thing. And thanks to Kevin for being flexible and doing this before we eat. Have we offered thanks for the food? About an hour ago. Does it still? It still counts. Okay. All right. So give us about 2 or 3 minutes to get things from the warmers to the line, and we'll go ahead and raise those doors, and you can start lining up at that end. You see where, is that Hayden? Right there? Okay, Hayden's waving. Line up right there by where Hayden is, and we'll start bringing you through the line. So I guess that's it. So help yourselves. Hello. Oh, is this thing on? Just one quick announcement. We do have enough food for seconds, so if you want another bite, you can just make your way back through the line and we'll help you out. All right, we're going to make a last call on seconds. Last call. If you want more food, hop up there now.
I hope everyone's enjoying themselves. I do have a couple of other things I want to add, and I knew that's exactly what you wanted to hear. It'll actually be short. One of the things that we're going to begin doing, and we're excited to be able to announce this, but of course you're familiar with our Moving Towards Spiritual Maturity program, I hope, for it's designed for high school graduates. By moving that, and our graduations are going to be moving within a couple of years to June. We're going to begin asking people to enter only in July, and that's based upon essentially to get the sequencing of courses correct. But one of the things that goes with that has to do with we're moving things across to interact with other people and colleges so that our courses can be accepted easily to some of the other schools. And because of the number of master's degrees we have on our faculty, that seems to be a pretty easy thing to do. Some even will go with some of the higher accrediting is not going to be a problem. But in conjunction with that, beginning this year, we will be able to offer our diplomas will read Bachelor of Biblical Studies. The MTSM will read Associate of Biblical Studies. And this is going to be good, I think, for credibility, but that also requires us to make sure that our courses measure up to that standard, which I do not have any problems with saying that we do. So that's something. The second thing that I'd like to bring up is we just entered a partnership as a school. So this is, we're excited about it. It's still low key, but one of our students, one of our graduates, Rowan Jones, is in Cape Town, South Africa. I was actually there just less than a year ago, and he'd looked at a number of other options. Didn't really fit what he was needing to do, that he's got a school there. It's a part-time school, and most of the other things that he'd looked at, he couldn't get a model that would work for him there. Since we didn't have a model, I could do something different. And so we've begun a partnership, and we're going to work together with them, meaning that we will send a teacher over to their school once a year at the minimum to teach at the Cape Bible School. And that helps them out, and it also provides us opportunities. But those of you who know Rowan, he's been a graduate, I think 2009? 2009 graduate, so he's been out there for 9 years. He was a native of Cape Town, has returned, and is doing some good work there. And so the other reason to bring that up, though, is that in the nature of what we're doing, this is not something financially that is in any way impacting us. Until I say, if you could help send me overseas, please talk to me afterwards. That is the cost, is I will be raising money myself to go. But that's the only cost to us. But it is something we're doing to try to help with only this understanding. We're going to help them train over there if we find in that process someone who we think would be good like Rowan, then to bring him over here to train and can go back, then that's something we're going to consider. But the main emphasis is going to be help them over there. But those are two things that I realized I did not cover earlier that I want to make sure that you knew.
Excuse